Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Every Man Has a Story, and my good buddy Paul is back here. And Paul and I have known each other for about a year and a half, maybe a little bit longer. And the more we get to know each other, the more personal things we share. And Paul told me a couple things the other day. I had no idea, especially Paul, because I always think of him as this guy that has never had any serious legal problems in his life. But anyway, I've admitted on my channel several times that I've had a few run-ins to the law when I was younger, and you were telling me that you didn't go into any detail, and I didn't want you to. I kind of want to hear the story the same time the viewers do, but you told me that you were arrested.
Yeah.
So did you get the money from the bank, or how many guns were involved? Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out.
Buckle up.
Did you get shot?
Yeah, that was one of the weirdest experiences of my life. You familiar with Rampart Division?
No.
Okay, Rampart Division, LAPD, back in the 70s was a bunch of cowboys. And it was a big scandal. They were taking bribes and kickbacks. And
I've seen some movies about that,
They were roughing people up. And,
right.
Same shit goes on today.
Right.
They were just really kind of known for that. Well, nothing like that sexy happened to me. But what did happen was, I think I was 20 years old maybe, and I had this job where I worked a night shift, 12 to 9, and it was like a boiler room answering telephones.
Yeah.
For like 10, what do they call them here?
Call centers.
Call centers.
Yeah.
It was the early version of a call center.
Right.
And we'd take calls in for construction companies and for this guy and for that guy and make appointments and blah, blah, blah. And I kind of learned, and they made us use a pitch sheet, so you had to answer a question, script. And so that was my job. And all I did was smoke cigarettes. That's when you could smoke inside.
Yeah.
And drink coffee. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, I got off of work and was heading home.
So what city was this? Where was this?
This was in Reseda,
California. Okay, yeah, right.
in the San Fernando Valley. And that's where my apartment was in Reseda. I forget what street, Banone or something like that. Anyway, I had bought a car, as was my routine when I was a kid, because I didn't have any money. And this shows you how old I am. Mm-hmm. But going back, you could pick up the LA Times. There was no Craigslist or anything like that. And you'd go to the San Fernando Valley area or section, and there would be cars for sale for $100, $200, maybe $300, $50.
Yeah.
So I would always buy a $100 or $150 car. And these would be big monster, Ford Galaxies and stuff like that. And they got you from A to B, but they were on their last legs, but that's what I could afford.
Right.
And I even got into a routine where I would drive these cars for maybe 1 month before it gave out, or 9 months before it gave out. And if it gave out, I would just abandon it wherever I just stopped and pull over on the side of the freeway and hitchhike home, and then pick up the paper and go buy another car. Because back in the day, you didn't have to have proof of insurance, you didn't have to have all this stuff. The registrations were usually current on the cars, and back then I think registration was $25 or $30. So you could be legal in a car pretty much if you had a driver's
But you did put the car in your name though, or
never?
You see your spaces.
Never.
So you were doing what's called skipping the title.
Never. Just bought it. I didn't care about the title. I knew it was going to break.
Yeah.
The guy selling it probably didn't have a title. I just gave him the money. He gave me the keys, and it could have been stolen for all I know. But anyway, the whole point of the story really isn't about the car, but it is. The car had bald tires on it, and I was coming home from work, and I had to make a U-turn to get on the 405 freeway. I had to go to an intersection, make a U-turn, and then to get onto the on-ramp to take me to Reseda from where I was up in Porter Ranch or something like that, Northridge area. And so when I made this U-turn at 9 o'clock in the morning, 9:15, my back tires fishtailed the car. And I wasn't going fast,
Yeah,
but they were just so bald that
You slid.
the car slid a little bit. And then I went and I got on the freeway and on come the lights.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, what the hell did I do? I mean, I didn't even realize that the tires had drawn his attention. So the cop comes up to the window, license, registration, which I guess I had. He didn't have any problem with any of that. And he says, well, you know, your car fishtailed when you made the U-turn. And so we're pulling you over for display of speed or something. To that
Reckless operation, something like that,
something. Again, that memory is very, very foggy because it was I was 20 years old,
Yeah.
40 some odd years ago. So anyway, they go back and he confers, and it's this old guy with a really young guy as his partner.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, sir, step out of the car. I'm like, where's my ticket? So I get out of the car, and they said, you're under the suspicion of driving while under the influence of alcohol. I said, I just got off of work. I said, it's 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I said, I worked the night shift over at so-and-so. And he says, yeah. So he had me do all the tests.
Yeah, they didn't have breathalyzers back then, did they?
No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, blah, 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 blah. And I couldn't do it today if you made me, because I don't have any balance left. But
Yeah.
all the leaning back, one leg, touch your nose, count, and they would always say left hand, right hand, the other hand, and I always got it right. You know, like, that's usually where they trip you up.
Yeah.
He told me to.
It's like Simon Says.
Exactly. He had me spell my name, Paul McGill. He said spell it backwards, and I did. I just took my time, and I was able to spell my name backwards. He said recite the alphabet. I recited the alphabet. He says now recite it backwards. And somewhere around,
I couldn't do that.
please, somewhere around Q or T or R or somewhere, I got bobbled up. He says, okay, that's it. Up against the car.
He was setting you up.
Handcuffed me, put me in had the kid, the young guy, cuffed me and put me in the back of the driver, the squad car.
Yeah.
I said, what about my car? He goes, don't worry about it. We'll have it towed. I'm broke, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not broke, but I'm living check to check.
Yeah.
I'm making $112 a week or some silly thing, you know, working this goofy job. So they take me to the station, and they go through the whole booking process. Again, the kid is booking me with the fingerprints and this and that and the other. And they said, okay, we're going to give you a breathalyzer, because they did have one.
Oh, they did have one
station.
there. Okay.
At the station, not
Yeah.
a portable one like they've got
Right.
now. I said, awesome, please give me the breathalyzer. Because
Yeah, you hadn't done nothing.
I ain't done it.
Yeah.
So I breathe into it. They made me breathe into that thing like 10 times. Harder, because it wasn't registering anything. And so they went and had a little conference with each other, and they said, okay, we're changing it to under the influence of narcotics. And they said, you have to do a urine test or a blood test. I said, well, give me a cup, and I'll go pee in a cup for you right now. Let's go. And so in comes the other young officer and puts on a glove. I said, what are you doing? I said, I know you got to watch me so
Yeah.
I don't fake
Yeah.
something. But he goes, no, I have to hold you.
You're fucking
I
kidding.
am not
Oh,
kidding. I can't make this shit up.
unbelievable.
And so I said, dude, that ain't happening. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard enough time trying to pee with you sitting here staring at me. There's a
Yeah.
lot of pressure, okay? But if you think you're going to hold me, I said, just forget it. I said, what's the other option, pal? He says, a blood test. And so let's go do a blood test. You can have your cup back. So we went and we did. They brought in a nurse, or I think, and they took some blood out of me. And I'm thinking, okay, they're going to take it to the blood machine and they're going to get a result. And they said, I said, okay, so what's about an hour goes by. I said, so what's the result of my blood test? They go, well, we won't have that till tomorrow. I said, so what's the deal? Into the cell. So
Unbelievable.
So I go into the drunk tank, and they got one open commode, and there's like 8 or 9 guys that are genuinely drunk and deserve to be in there. Then I'll never forget, there was a guy sleeping in front of the only commode. He had passed out. And they brought in a guy, this big guy, and they threw him in there. And the first thing he did was just kick the guy out of the way. of the commode so he could use it. I said, well, I'm not in a very friendly territory here, and not one cop to be seen, to help you if you get your ass kicked in there. So I'm given the proverbial phone call. A couple hours later, I make a phone call, and I call my roommate, a guy named Case Redding. And sidebar, his dad was Jerry Redding of Redken Hair Care Products. That was my roommate. So I don't get Casey. He's at work. But back then we had a beautiful thing called an answering machine. Right now it's a much more complicated.
Yeah.
But back in the day we had one of those things. We shared a landline, and I left him a message, which I knew he would get, and he did. And so I spent the night in the drunk pig, and Casey came down to give me a ride, and they released me on my own recognizance, which was a relief. They didn't throw me, they didn't impose bail or anything. They said, okay, we're gonna release you, and your court date is this. And I said, well, where's my car? And they hand me a little sticker that's in this impound lot. So I come out of there, I'm still wearing my goofy little tie. I got no car. Casey takes me to the impound lot, and we get my car out. I think it was $35. And I had 20 bucks, and Casey ponied up the other 15. So we get my car out. Talk about a long night, no sleep.
Oh, no.
I forgot to tell you, they they give you this goofy breakfast, and the guy sitting next to me just took mine away from me. And I said, I do not ever want to be in jail again. And so I really wasn't going to eat it anyway because it was really funky looking. So I go to work. I miss work that next day, but the guy that I worked for, a guy named Owen Rogers, was a really cool guy. And he really liked me a lot, and he had had a number of run-ins with the police. So he was kind of one of these street guys that made good in business. Yeah. And so he says, you know what, I got a friend who will help you. He's a lawyer, and he will help you. And so I think Owen paid for it. I think Owen paid the guy like $150 to show up in court. And so we show up in court, and the blood test comes up negative. The breathalyzer was negative. I left out an important part. Before they threw me into the tank, they put me in a room and turned off the lights. This is the most important part, and I'd forgotten about it. And I was in total darkness for maybe 45 minutes in a little room. And all of a sudden, the door burst open, and this guy comes, and at that point, he looked like he was about 7 feet tall, with a flashlight and a very commanding voice, and made me do the whole friggin' routine all over again. Stand up, 1 foot, this, that, the other, boppity, 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 boop. And he says, it's my professional opinion that you're under the influence of PCP. And that's when they threw me into the tank. And so we go to court about a month later, I think. And the judge asked the prosecutor, what do you want to do? He says, we want a procedure on her. And the judge says, on what? He says, well, we have a professional, which is this 7 foot tall officer, opinion that he was under the influence. This man is trained to, spot someone that's under the influence of drugs. And I forget his name, but the attorney that I had said, that's great, we want a jury trial. And then everything stopped right there. And then they conferred. The DA changed his attitude the minute he heard jury trial.
Yeah, you have a right to that.
Uh-huh. And they agreed to just charge me with 2 tickets, display of speed and some sort of endangerment. And it was like $220. And for some reason, I don't know, I can't remember how I paid that. If I paid it then, because I didn't have $220 on me.
You were totally victimized.
But,
totally victimized.
So my lawyer says, Paul, he says, this is the weirdest case I've ever seen. I'm going to look into it. said, I'm going to make some phone calls. It turns out, remember I said the kid was young?
Yeah.
It was his first day on the job. It was training day. And I was the guinea pig.
But they set you up totally.
For
no reason.
Well,
For no reason. Not like you gave them attitude.
Here's the reason, is I'm young, I'm broke, and I can't fight back. And they know that. When they saw me, they saw the old car, they saw a young kid. They gave this training day, this officer that was on the job for the first day, he was the one that was supposed to hold me in the toilet. He was the one that did all the, I realized he was the one that did the fingerprinting. It was his first time.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was a joke on him when they said you got to hold the stick while he's.
Could have been.
They could have made him do that, then have a big laugh about it later.
Could have been. That never occurred to me, but it could have.
It sounds like it, you know.
Could have been. And so that was the term I got arrested and thrown in jail.
Yeah, but the thing, when something like that happens to you, especially when you're 20 years old, it kind of makes you like resent and not trust police officers for the rest of your life.
That didn't have that effect on me.
Really?
Honest to God, it didn't have that effect on me. Once he explained to me what was going on, I was reading in the papers that this Rampart Division was a bunch of goofball cowboys, as I mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
and that they weren't representative of all police, you know? And so I always felt, maybe it's because cops used to come talk to us when we were little kids in school, you know,
Yeah.
you know, deputy dog and all this kind of stuff. So I always had a respect for firemen and policemen and people like that. And I think I was just cognizant enough to know that I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I was being used and abused by the system. And I have a healthy, now that I'm older, I now have a big distrust of those types of individuals,
Yeah.
those entities. But when I was younger, I'm a real fast to forgive kind of guy, and I just figured I was at the wrong place at the wrong time, and I figured they're not all like this. They don't represent the entire force. But as I get older, I have seen abuses of power, because that's what it is. They have power, and they abused it. And I see politicians, and they abuse it, and corporations, and they abuse it. And COVID-19, it's being abused.
Yeah.
And we could go on and on and on. Now I'll tell you about the time that I should have been arrested.
Okay.
I was with my buddy Case Redding yet again. And back in a few years later, back in the day, Quaaludes.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Were
Yeah.
the big drug. You know, that was what you wanted to do, because if you took a Quaalude, it was the same as having 2 or 3 drinks, and you really had a good time. And we would pay $2 for a Quaalude, and we'd have to pay $8 for a drink. And again, we were broke, but we wanted to go out. We were young and dumb.
Yeah.
And I told you that we used drugs and we drank and all that kind of stuff. And so Casey wanted to go to this show where some woman took a bath in a big champagne glass down in Hollywood. It was some famous stripper.
Wow.
They didn't have porn stars, they had strippers back then. And she wasn't completely naked or anything. She had like something around her, and she had these big fake boobs, and she would get this big champagne glass and splash around, you know. Casey thought it was the greatest thing on earth, you know. We're sitting in one of those old-fashioned booths.
Yeah.
You
The
see
round
Frank
ones,
Sinatra
the vinyl and everything, yeah.
And we keep eating these ludes, and they're bootleg. So what they did was they weren't real ludes. They had been made in someone's garage, I guess, and they packed them too hard, so they didn't release. And we kept taking them, and nothing was happening. So we said, we got burned on the ludes. And so here we go. I'm behind the wheel of another car, and I go onto Hollywood Boulevard, and just as I hit Hollywood Boulevard, all 7 ludes that I took hit at one time.
Oh my God.
And so I'm driving as erratic as you could imagine. And the lights come on, and Casey says, hey, you can get away from them. So I said, yeah. And so we're driving through the Hollywood Hills. Now I'm going about 28 miles an hour trying to make my getaway. And the cops are just staying behind us. And eventually they pinch us into a cul-de-sac. All right. So I got no choice. I'm blocked in. So I parked the car, and they were kind of laughing. The cops come up to his window and my window, and they said, hey, you boys drinking? And we said, oh, no. And so when Casey opened, they said, we want you both out. So when Casey opened the door of his car, about 6 of those margarita cans that you used to buy came falling out onto the sidewalk. So we had all this crap on us. We were obviously just as goofed up as you could get. And so they were talking to Casey, and Casey's yelling at the guy, saying, he was being as rude could be. And I thought, oh, Casey, shut up, you know. And he was calling the guy names.
Oh, my God.
Screaming at him.
Who was driving, you or him?
I was driving.
Okay.
And so, maybe that's why he was so brave. He had nothing to lose, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't the driver. And so I'm trying to be polite and calm. And they're giving me the test, and I'm not getting through this test at all like I did the other day. And here's what they said to us. They said, well, you know what? You guys are about as effed up as you can get. And the deal is it's just hit 1 o'clock in the morning, and you know what? Our shift is over. And to be candid with you, boys, we don't feel like doing the paperwork. And I said, so what does that mean? He says, it means you can drive home and we'll read about you in tomorrow's paper.
Wow. Jeez. Wow.
You can't make this stuff up. So those are my two.
Now did this happen after the 20 years?
After that.
So it's almost like the universe gave you back. It's like God said, okay, we owe you one.
And,
here it is.
You know, it's like, this is not one of those stories that you're proud of, that you were driving around all screwed up and everything, but it's the truth. You know, and it's what happened, because our experience has been, is you take a lewd, after about an hour or so it wears off, and then you can drive home and you're not endangering yourself or anybody else. But in our case, we were at this place for 2 or 3 hours before they took effect, because they were homemade, and that was the pickle that we were in. And so, and then the coup de grace is when we woke up in the morning, I had parked the car in Casey's front yard instead of the driveway.
Was this another cheap car?
Yeah, another beater.
Wow. Yeah, I had mixed relations with cops out there. When I was living in San Diego, I had, one time we were out, we had a bong in the car and some pot and like a 6-pack of beer. We hadn't even used anything yet.
Right.
They pulled us over. They found the bong. They dumped the water out of the bong, gave it back to us. They took our pot for themselves. And they gave us back the beer that wasn't open and let us go.
That reminds me, I was in a group of, well, I wasn't driving this time, I was in the back seat, and we were going to a party with me and about 6 other knuckleheads, 3 boys, 3 girls, and cop pulled us over, and they made us pour out the beer.
Yeah.
And that was it. They just let us go. And I think what these guys did when they saw like teenagers or young people or whatever, they just kind of said, you know, I used to be like that. I'll let this guy go, you know. They're nice kids. They're just being goofy. So, you know, why take them in?
I was managing a hotel in San Diego back in the 70s when I got out of the Navy. And it was like a real cheap hotel. It's called the Knox Hotel. It was like $22 a week.
Oh, boy.
You know. And one of our tenants would always go out and get drunk and get arrested, whatever. And one day the cops pull up. They got him in the back of the car, and he's just trashed.
Yeah.
And they opened the door, they let him out. They brought him home, wherever they found him. They brought him home, and he had like Miller Lights. He had like 3 left, and he's holding them, and he's dropping on the ground. They're helping him with his beer, get him home, let him go back in, no arrest, no nothing, just found the guy and brought him home. So, you know, there's a lot of nice cops out there, you know, there really are. It's like,
there are.
You
know, when I had trouble with my son many, many years later, he was having addiction issues. There was some sort of big hoo-ha at his mom's house before she died. And I went over there, I got called, and the lieutenant that was on call, they had to actually strap my boy down. He was being so violent, you know, and combative with him, as high as a kite. But they said something about me, and this lieutenant, I forget his name, He looked at me and he says, "No," he says, "this poor guy's got enough on his plate as it is. Leave him out of this." You know what I mean? It was like a father that understood what another father was going through. So yeah, I mean, you're gonna have shitty people in every profession.
That's true.
Cops. You're gonna have lazy people. You're gonna have corrupt people, and then at the end of the day, you're also gonna have the other swing. You're gonna have super empathetic people, super good people, super nice people, super understanding people.
Well, quick change of subject here. Like here, living in the Philippines, one thing I noticed being here the last year and a half is the lack of police officers around. Like, there's no cops with speed checks. They're, speed traps, nothing like that, pulling people over for a bad taillight or whatever. They do set up checkpoints every rarely, and then the people just either go around the checkpoint or they just turn around and go back the other way.
Yeah.
But in America, like, I've gotten pulled over. Like, maybe I was going 10 miles over the speed limit, maybe whatever. But I remember I got pulled over one time, and I was going like 10 miles over speed in my own neighborhood. The entrance to it was just a straight road, like through a forest, nothing, no houses, no nothing. I'm going like 35, and at 25, this cop pulls me over. And I just got back from having surgery, and like I had stitches all through my side and all this stuff happening, and I was out of money, like worst time of my life, and it gives me a ticket. And it's cost me like $400 by the time it was all said and done. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people in America, I think especially poor people, that something like happened to you when you're 20 years old, that could set you back months.
Yeah.
Literally set you back months. And if you can't pay the fine, then it starts adding on, like interest and late fees and penalties and court costs. Next thing you know, you're put in jail for some minor, tiny little thing where, at least here in the Philippines, I don't see that happening. I'm not sure about Manila, but I mean, here on our island, I don't see any cops hassling anybody, do you? I just don't see that.
Yeah, I got a two-part answer. I noticed that from the day all this happened up until the day I left the country, whenever I saw people pulled over, for the most part, it was poor people.
Yeah.
And I think they're just like when they pulled me over, I was easy prey. I was not going to argue. I was submissive to them. I was scared of them. I was not, you pull some guy over in a $200,000 Mercedes, he might have to pull out the business cards, and he might have connections and make your life miserable. So if you're a cop, what do you want to do? Get the easy ticket because there's a quota or whatever?
Yeah, that's the thing, there's a quota.
So, all right, let me make my quota. I can make it on this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and let the other guy.
Yeah, how many arrests have you had this week?
We're all self-centered, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that aspect of it. As far as out here, the police have nothing to do with traffic. So cops in cop cars have no power or authority over traffic. That's all LTO. And so the police are designated for like drugs and disputes and fist fights and
which you see very little of that here too.
Very little of it. But the LTO, the Land Transportation Office, is the one that's in charge of traffic. Cops have nothing to do.
But they're not out looking for people violators.
Well, no, they just have the checkpoints.
Every once in a while.
The checkpoints are, they're serious when they've got the military there.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Police there, because the police again have no authority, at least in Dumaguete, over traffic. It's the LTO, and so they're looking for registrations, driver's licenses, helmets, shoes, masks, whatever the
Who are those rebels? What's the name of the rebels that sometimes they're looking for those guys? The MPA or
the
something
MPA.
Like that. Yeah, because one time they were looking for them. Yeah. I've seen that not so much this. I remember in Bohol they were looking for them, pulling over buses and checking everybody.
Yeah, well, they get the hot leads and tips and stuff like that. But as far as cops go, it's funny because when I first got here, I didn't know, and I was on a rental bike, and I was driving up the road, and the lights were on behind me. I said, "Oh shit, what did I do?" So I pulled my bike over. They just kept going, and then over time, I found out that whenever they get into a car with lights on it, they just turn the lights on from the minute they start driving.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah.
They love those lights.
Yeah, they're pretty.
You ever seen one cop without his lights on?
You're right, I haven't. They all have lights on.
You're never going to.
Yeah.
Because they
no siren, just lights.
No, just lights.
I don't know if they have a siren.
It just looks cool, you know. It's like Pimp My Ride. I got the lights on top. And then the funniest one was at Christmas at my old apartment. I was coming home and I was opening the gate and a cop car came by, a truck rather, and inside of it was a cop driving as drunk as you could get, singing Christmas songs, driving up the street. I just have that in my memory. This cop just drunk out of his mind, singing Christmas songs.
Wow.
But the LTO, I've noticed that they've impounded locals a lot more than foreigners. And there was at one time, there was over 1,000 bikes sitting
We were just down there the other day
LTO.
because Jen's trying to get her driver's license. I noticed that there's a whole bunch of bikes there.
That's from the last time that they had the big crackdown on registrations and driver's licenses. And who doesn't have a driver's license or a registration? A poor person.
Not like that,
They
but it's
cost
very
money.
hard to get a driver's license
It's
here.
very hard to get.
I mean,
it's harder for a local to
Yeah.
get, like your girlfriend. She has to first get a learner's permit.
She's
right?
got that.
And then she's got to take the test, and then she's got to do this and all that.
Well, they don't tell you what to study.
But when you and I go, we've
Yeah.
already got a driver's
Yeah.
license. We skip all that.
Yeah.
Now it's just paperwork and money,
Right,
right?
right.
So you'll look at, there's a few good bikes down there. I did hear of a guy, a foreigner guy, that had a Harley, and they pulled him over for something, and the military was there, and he started giving them a ration of shit, so they just took his bike.
Yeah.
And you very rarely hear that with the foreigners. Usually usually the foreigners are polite,
Yeah.
and they know how to conduct themselves, and usually they've got the driver's license and the registration,
Yeah.
because they've got the money and they've been here for a while. So no, they're not in violation. Thank you, sir, and off you go.
Yeah.
But you pull over. Well, if Jen got pulled over right now, she might get a ticket, right? She doesn't have a driver's license.
She's got the learner's permit.
I don't know if that would work or not. So
Well, the thing is, she went and they made her take a driving course, right? It was mandatory.
yeah,
It was 9,000 pesos, okay?
a school,
Driving school. So you think they're going to take you out, teach you how to drive, right?
right?
They took her out to a car. This is the gas, this is the brake, this is clutch, this is the manual, this is how you start it. That they didn't go anywhere in the car.
That was-
Then they came back in, sat down, filled out some forms. Here you go. Oh, and it's 500 pesos if you want to pass. She gave him another 500 pesos. Okay, you completed the driving course. So she didn't learn anything. And that's
That
just
was
the way it goes.
$200 though.
Yeah. And so then
500 pesos.
yeah, and so then she goes to take the driving test, and there's no like booklet to study from. There's nothing. And so she goes online and she studies for hours, like all the road signs. We have no road signs here on the
No.
phone, hardly none.
No,
Not even
there's like
stop
two
signs.
stop signs, I think.
But there's like 50 road signs you have to learn, very ones I've never seen before. And then there's like all these acronyms for different departments within the LTO. You have to know all those. And every time you take the test, it's a different test. So she's failed twice, and she's all upset. So she's got to do it again. So then, what people do is they turn to like a fixer,
Yeah.
and you pay somebody, $100, and they take you in the back door of the LTO. You next thing you know, boom, 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 and you get a license 2 days later.
Yeah.
And almost everybody I've talked to, locals, they all use a fixer.
Yep.
They make it so hard that the only way to really get it done is to pay a bribe.
Yep.
And so that's one of the things that's not perfect about the Philippines,
No. One thing that I've heard is if you go to Bailwan, you can pay 3,500, maybe 4,000.
Yeah, that's where they go.
pesos, And boom, you go in there, you get the fixer,
Yep.
and there's no test, there's no this, there's no
Nope.
that. They just sign off on everything.
Yeah.
And one last note on that is when I bought my bike, I didn't have the papers. And so they said, well, you can just bring anybody's papers with you. And I thought, that's weird. So I borrowed a neighbor's papers, went down to have my bike inspected, and he says, how old's your bike? And I told him, and he's looking at one that's a Honda Click, and I own a Kimco 150. But I said, well, I just bought it. But he goes, okay, so he just checked off everything. I said, are you going to go look at the bike? He goes, no.
Yeah.
He didn't inspect anything.
Yeah.
But the same thing, 500 pesos. Here you go.
Yeah.
So, in a way, it works good. But at the same time, you wonder what else is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
So that's a little slice of life for your viewers
Yeah.
of life in the Philippines. Money fixes everything, right?
yeah. But I mean, the same stuff goes on in other countries. It's not, you can't just say it's only the Philippines. And,
No.
but, that's a really interesting story though, Paul. I mean, it's just amazing how somebody didn't do anything, gets pulled over and arrested and put in jail. I mean, just think if it would have been a 20-year-old girl. You know, couldn't get a hold of her parents, how terrified she'd be.
Yeah.
Even if she's in with women in a drunk tank. I mean, you'd be terrified. My daughter would have been crying, and
Yeah.
she'd been traumatized for, days.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so-
I think that the scariest part was being in the drunk tank.
Yeah.
So I experienced a lot of violence with these guys. I mean, not myself personally, but the guy took my food
Yeah.
just because he was bigger than me. And the other guy kicked the guy out from in front of the commode.
Yeah.
Some guy that was passed out drunk, because he wanted to let everybody know King Kong had
Yeah.
arrived. He was in charge that night. And so now you don't get any sleep. You miss a day of work. Thank God I didn't get hurt. But you walk out just pissed off at the world.
Yeah.
And
And then some guys
hold on
act
to it.
out after that. They go and do something violent. They shoot a police officer. They commit some kind of violence because they've got this anger and they have nowhere to vent it. And so they vent it on some innocent person. Maybe it's their family when they get home. Maybe it's a total stranger.
Yeah, well, if I had, one extra screw, I got plenty of screws loose in my head, but if I had that extra one loose, that could have really torqued my attitude for the
Yeah.
rest of my life. But like I said, it just became an interesting story after
Yeah.
a while. I used to tell that story to anybody I'd meet. Man, you ought to hear about what happened to me last month, That was the biggest thing that had ever happened to me. in
Well,
my
if you
20
added
years.
it all up, what do you think it cost you the whole, what did that day cost you in money, including not working?
I would say about $400.
I mean, that's a lot of money
That
for.
was huge. Like
that
I
was
said,
a month.
That was a month's worth
Yeah.
of work. And the lawyer was cool. He took like $10 a month, and everybody that helped me was cool.
Yeah.
I mean, work understood. My friend came down and picked me up. Owen, my boss, arranged for me to have this.
Still,
lawyer
all in
for
all,
me
you
to
ended up
nothing.
losing
So
$400.
I lost $400, but I really got a lot of love out of it too,
Yeah.
by those surrounding me. That's the way
Yeah.
I saw it. What if I had known those people?
Yeah.
Well, where would I have been? I would have been in court with maybe a lawyer that didn't ask for.
And do you ever
jury
think,
trial.
like the other time, like if you had got busted, what the charges would have been there?
I could have
Or
been
if
in jail for 10 years.
Yeah, you had an accident.
Yeah.
Somebody could have got
hurt
killed.
somebody on
Could
the
have got
way
really
home.
So it's like karma.
It's not my proudest moment, but I've got to confess it or admit
Yeah.
it because it's the truth.
Yeah.
And
You'll let people tell me don't make the same
You
mistake.
don't like to bullshit on our channels
No.
and come off as these,
And nowadays they've got this fentanyl that they're putting in like fake OxyContin drugs, and kids are dying.
yeah,
They're literally dying from
Yeah.
it. So
they're killing all their
it's-
own customers.
Yeah, it's much more dangerous now than it was when you and I were young.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, thank you a lot for sharing that story, Paul. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we convince you to share some more stories about your life
Absolutely.
before the Philippines.
Absolutely. It's cathartic for me. I like getting it out of my system.
Yeah. All righty.
All right, man.
Thanks.
Thanks.